Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Rapid City Legal and Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, December 13th, 2017. I'd like to start the meeting with a roll call and determination of quorum, please, Stacy. Thank you. We did squeak by today. So now's the time to adopt today's agenda. Unless there's any addition, subtraction, or modification on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion from a committee member to adopt today's agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion by Armstrong
Second.
to adopt today's agenda as presented. Second by Drury. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Now's the time for general public comment. This is the time for any audience member to address the committee members today on any item that is currently not on today's agenda. I do not have any speaker request forms. Am I missing anyone in the audience? Seeing none, general public comment is now done. We're on to public comment for consent items. Today's consent items are 1 through 14. I do not have any speaker request forms for any of the consent items. Am I missing anyone in the audience? Seeing none, public comment for consent items 1 through 14 is now closed. We'll now consider items 1 through 14, which is our consent calendar. Is there any item that a committee member wants to pull for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt or approve consent items 1 through 14.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Drury to approve items 1 through 14, second by Armstrong. Any further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now on to public comment for non-consent items. Non-consent items on today's agenda are items 15 through 19. I have one speaker request consent, but I'm going to wait for that item. So I have no other public comments for non-consent items. Am I missing anyone in the audience? Seeing none, we are now going to consider non-consent items. Items number 15. Item number 15 is to appeal the denial for alterations to the historic structure located at 430 Main Street pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 1-19A-11-1 and RCMC 1754-080. Chair recognizes Sarah Hensel from the city.
I don't believe.
There we go.
There it goes. The applicants have requested to continue this item to the December 27th Legal Finance Committee meeting. They are evaluating their options still, so our staff recommendation would be to allow for that continuation to 2 weeks from now.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll entertain a motion to that effect from any committee member.
Motion to continue.
Got a motion by Armstrong to continue to the December 27th Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Second by Drury. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 15 has been continued to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Item number 16 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6214, an ordinance regarding the supplemental appropriation number 5 for 2017. Chair recognizes nobody, so I'll entertain a motion. To approve. I've got a motion to approve by Armstrong.
Second.
Second by Drury. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6215, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 6 for fiscal year 2017. Got a motion to approve by Armstrong.
Second.
Second by Drury. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6213, an ordinance amending Chapter 5.36 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers, and gems and precious metals dealers. Chair recognizes Alderwoman Drury.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask Chief Jaggers if you could explain this ordinance request to us?
Yes. Chief?
Yes, this is, for the most part, it's simply an update to the current ordinance and will give us the ability to effectively regulate these types of businesses for the community's best interest. So we do have a short 5-slide presentation that we'd like to share with you. And I'd like to introduce Courtney Doer, who is a license and compliance inspector at the Rapid City Police Department. And I'll pass it over to Courtney for a couple minutes here.
Thank you, Chief.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. So, as the chief said, we were looking at trying to update this ordinance to help us better regulate these particular businesses. It was recommended that we look at the pond ordinance to see about any changes that might be required or necessary at this time. How do I get it to go to the next slide? Got it. So the first thing we were looking at is the license requirements as far as issuing a license. So essentially any person that's got a financial interest in that business should be applying for a license, up to 5 people. If there are more than 5 individuals that have a financial interest in the business, it would be only those top 5 that we would require. An application should be updated anytime there's a new individual that gains a financial interest in the business as well. And all persons should be qualified as far as a background check. So right now, as it stands, we could have a business that's operating where there's 4 people that have a financial interest in that business, and only one of them has actually passed a background check. So we have no idea about the other 3. As it stands right now, this ordinance actually pertains to issuing a license and not issuing a license to those individuals that may have been convicted of either a crime of theft or dishonesty, being a misdemeanor or felony charge. So there's nothing else that covers any of these other offenses which we felt were necessary to put into the ordinance. So a license will not be issued to anybody that within the preceding 5 years has been convicted of a felony class crime, drug-related offense, weapons offense, or crime of violence. So those are the big ones. The other ones we weren't as concerned with as these ones, simply because anybody that is operating in one of these businesses could use the business as an opportunity to hide assets, contraband, weapons, and we just want to try and avoid that if necessary. The other piece of this is that on the application, if anybody that is filling one out fails to disclose any prior conviction within the preceding 5 years of any of these kinds of crimes, the license would be denied. So in keeping with the new license requirements, the revocation would then have to change as well to include the same requirements as far as felony convictions for drug-related offenses, weapons offenses, or those crimes of violence. So it's just making sure that the practice remains consistent throughout. The next biggest part of the change is going to be the record-keeping requirement changes, which a lot of our pawn brokers and secondhand dealers and gems and precious metals dealers are doing an excellent job of doing this already, but we just wanted to make sure to modify it. As of right now, the ordinance simply reads for a description to be able to provide to us so we can help our victims identify an object. It says, if available, the manufacturer's name, style or model number, and serial number. That's all that's required. So my husband, for an example, anytime he buys a tool, he marks his initials on it so he knows that is his tool. So it's not a part of the requirement as it is right now, but that would be beneficial. So I took a look at some other regional ordinances to kind of get an idea of what they were looking for in their ordinance, and we kind of came up with an idea that includes all of it, and it kind of mashes it all together to get anything and everything that we are looking for to try and describe an item that a victim is looking for. So the new one would say an accurate and detailed account and description of each article purchased or received, including but not limited to any and all trademarks, identification numbers, serial numbers, model numbers, owner-applied numbers, engraved initials, brand names, or other identifying marks. That gives the pawnbrokers an opportunity to collect any and as much information as they can about that particular item. So we thought that would be beneficial. Requiring photographs of all jewelry purchased and received, which a lot of the pawnbrokers are doing right now. With the new technology, it's become a lot easier. The pawnbrokers that I've talked to are using a specific pawn masters program, which helps them to actually take a photograph of what they're receiving and then post it directly to the online application that we use to monitor and look for these stolen items through the pawn shop. So they're already doing that, and you might remember the sunset clause that kind of died, so we wanted to bring that back. And so far the pawn shop owners that I've talked to have all been on board with this. So the other thing we wanted to take out was the items taken on pledge. It's very difficult as the authority going into these locations to audit an item and look at the information that they gave us as a description without having that item on hand. So if a customer brings in an item to pawn or for the pawn shop to buy, we felt it necessary to take out that pledge information, and maybe it was valid at some point in time, but nowadays it's just not feasible for what we're looking to do with these shops. The fourth item on this is the written declaration of the customer's ownership. That is a tool, I will say, to help the pawn owners make sure that they are putting forth that effort to obtain the ownership information. In addition to that, it also gets the seller's signature that they rightfully own that particular item that they are selling or pawning. So it helps us to be able to prosecute it in the future if that item does come up to be stolen. So those are 4 big points with the record keeping, and like I said, a lot of the pawnbrokers are already doing this. So it's something that we felt would be beneficial to be put in the actual ordinance.
Thank you. Oh, you're not done.
One last slide, and this one's a really short one. So right now the prohibited transaction actually says that there are no transactions to be done with minors. We wanted to add in that property cannot be received if it violates a state or federal law. It's pretty self-explanatory.
All right, thank
If
you.
I could just add that we
Hi,
have
Chief.
notified all of the current licensees in the city of the proposed changes through a letter. We've had a few phone calls and discussions with our criminal investigations division regarding the changes, and overall it appears that the industry understands the need for us to make these adjustments, and they overall are supportive.
Thank you. Alderwoman Drury, you still have the floor.
I guess I don't have any questions. My question was going to be, have you spoken with the current owners? And so there's really not a grandfather clause in this. It'll be just next application, the new rules go into effect, or they will go into effect immediately?
I think it's 21 days after the second reading or something like that. Is that correct, Joel?
Yes, it'll go into effect. I guess we'll have to discuss the practicalities of setting out and giving notice, but certainly will be looked at when the applications are renewed for sure. But if we want to do it before that, we're probably going to have to send out some notices and take into consideration the fact the ordinance has changed as we work through that process.
Any further discussions? Questions?
I yield the floor.
Oh, sorry about that. Chief, just as a follow-up, the sunset clause was mentioned. Is this sunsetting at the end of this year, or has it already sunset?
It sunsetted quite some time ago, so I think the big thing there was we were requiring photographs of jewelry. Jewelry is something hard for us to recover without a photograph. And so, like Courtney said, most of the pawn shops are still doing so, even though they're not required by ordinance to do so, but we'd just like to tighten up the ordinance.
All right, thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Drury to approve item number 18, second by Armstrong. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 19 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6216, an ordinance amending section 5.52.130 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to merchant security vehicle identification. Chair recognizes Alderwoman Drury.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask the chief a question on this one also, please?
Okay.
Could you give us a brief summary of why this is important to come forward, Chief?
It's really just a simple change and update. I think the previous ordinance goes back to the 1970s, and the term merchant security is no longer a common term. So, and then the other thing is that it just it makes it more specific on how to distinguish the markings on a private security vehicle by utilizing the term security. So in the past, that was the spirit of the ordinance. It just wasn't as articulate as it needed to be to ensure that we get compliance. So with this change, we will be able to ensure that all local security companies are compliant in identifying themselves clearly as security.
Okay, and it'll be easier for the public to recognize the difference between a security firm and actual police force. Is that?
That is correct. And I should add that I did hand out each of the council members a letter of support from the South Dakota Highway Patrol, who also is requesting support of showing support of this change. And I did give Stacy a copy of that letter so it can be linked prior to the council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Any further discussion? Chief, as a follow-up on that one, since you provided this letter, it is dated November 27th, which is a couple weeks ago. Was the request in here taken into account in this ordinance?
It was, and the letter was received by me today. That's why it wasn't published to the agenda first. And the reason with the delay of date is the state, the way that they are set up, a letter such as that needs to go to headquarters and Pierre for approval before it gets sent back to a local government body. So there's a little bit of bureaucracy that we're not used to here. So that's why there's a little bit of delay on the date.
And that's fine, because my question really is centered around, since you did hand deliver and it'll be attached for Monday night, and this is just the first reading, there is a request in here. And so my question is more, is this request already handled, or do you anticipate a minor modification between first and second reading?
You know, I think the letter that I wrote is attached to the agenda, and basically the request from the Highway Patrol is simply showing that we collectively support this change. Captain Ketterling and I had a discussion regarding the concern that we had, and we share the same concern, so we have a letter from both of us just to show this isn't simply affecting us in Rapid City. It's a bigger issue, and really I think it also affects the federal law enforcement, the Forest Service law enforcement. But I think the change is necessary, and it will ensure that there's a lot more clarity, especially for the public.
So his request that is in this letter about utilizing, not utilizing the word patrol, utilizing the word security, and then also having the emblem of the security company displayed in a different location than what is normally used for federal or state or city vehicles, that you feel that that's already covered in this new that's what I'm trying to ask, is, or are you anticipating a slight modification between first and second reading to consider this, or do you think it already covers what he outlines in his letter?
I think it already covers it. I think
All right.
the simple change of requiring the word security conspicuously will resolve concerns.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Got a motion by Drury to approve item number 19, a second by Armstrong. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Drury to adjourn, second by Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.